Mediation. We have analyst Ivan Swafula as well as lawyer Caleb Kusienya, and we will be discussing the issue of the Rwanda courts shortly. But still, on matters court-annexed mediation, a major milestone has been achieved today at the Nyeri Law Courts after a case pitting family members over the ownership of property went through successful mediation process. The courts in Nyeri today is set to adopt the resolutions made in that particular case. Let's get those proceedings live.
Because it is for me to just adopt. I don't even need to know the contents. I don't need to know the contents. I don't even need to know how they reached an agreement. It is confidential to them. Okay? So it is better. But your client is here. Your client is here. I know you don't know whether they're here. Mr. Kareru, what about the person you're holding brief for?
Let it go on record that has been requested by Mr. Ezekiel Mediation to hold brief for Mr. Ashero. For the instructions, I know the reason that's why I've said that. I know this matters women at a point in life, and somebody will come before court and indicate that. I didn't instruct Mr. Ashero, because I know the nature of what it is that is being measured.
So requested by the first plaintiff to hold brief.
That is the only way that you're able to save your skin.
You're the one.
I'm the one. No, we had not actually received the notice.
Huh?
We had not received the notice for this mention.
Or you had it?
All right, it is a major milestone there in the Nyeri Law Courts, a case pitting family members over the ownership of property having gone through successful mediation there. The Nyeri Court there adopting the resolutions made in that particular case. We'll be crossing over back there in just a moment. But let's discuss, this particular milestone that comes, Kusienya, before we discuss, the Rwandan genocide. What does this mean in terms of the adoption, really, by the common mananchi of court-annexed mediation?
This basically just goes to show how much mediation is needed in terms of resolving conflicts, because I'm very sure that matter had dragged on for a very long time in that court. And just besides resolving that conflict, restoring the parties' relationship in mediation, which is something that would not normally happen in the court system, because it's an adversarial system whereby one party wins and the other party loses. In the sense that if you win in the court, the other party will be complaining, or if he wins, will complain. But now you realize with mediation, that relationship will be restored, and going forward, they live and coexist harmoniously. Right.
Yes. Wafula, I don't know if there's anything more emotive in Kenya than matters land and property. And this was quite an interesting case there, pitting two families. They have managed to resolve this case through mediation. What does that mean for us in terms of adoption of mediation?
I think it's a 50-50. It's a two-way win. Both, I think, as he has mentioned, is that in the normal court process, there's a loser and there's a winner. But now here, I think they can resolve it that everybody gets a share. But I think now what remains, the next process, I think, is enforcing what has been reached, or what, because you have heard the magistrate actually say she is not interested in the content of the whatever they have agreed, but then who enforces what they have agreed? That's now what becomes the next question. But I think it's very clear. I think it's a cheaper process. It's cheaper than I know of cases that have dragged in courts for over 20 years, over 30 years. But I think if this is the way people to go, then I think must be embraced.
Absolutely.
And I think also there's also I think the community leadership also, and the cultural aspect of conflict resolution must have played part also when it comes to especially land disputes.
Right. Let's just talk about neighboring Rwanda. It is commemorating 25 years since the 1994 genocide. And we've just seen a story there from Eugene of perpetrators of the genocide and victims of genocide living in 3 villages side by side as friends and even as neighbors. So that relationship really has been restored. Let's discuss Rwanda's Gashasha courts, which have been hailed as a post-genocide success. They were controversial at first, but how has Rwanda managed to achieve that?
I think Rwanda has managed to achieve that in that they did a lot of public awareness to the people. They did door to door to make sure that whatever happened in that genocide does not recur again. And then they realized, going through the legal system, yes, it might resolve those disputes, but then it cannot resolve the emotional issues that people have. You understand? So then they had to do a lot of work in terms of just educating the public about those Gashasha courts and what those courts mean towards the restoring those relationships that they had been, broken. Yes.
Our fellow, just analyzing, how far Rwanda has come since then and seeing the unity really that is being displayed now. What would you say about the Gashasha courts?
Having the privilege of visiting Rwanda quite a number of times and seeing how not only the way the court process, but looking at the transition and the post-conflict process in Rwanda, you will admit that actually Rwanda has done a lot, especially I would say the authorities in Rwanda have really taken this as a huge project for them. One thing I think is important to mention is that even there was a lot of backlog in these cases, in the genocide cases. Because a few cases were taken to the ICTR in Arusha, the so-called high-profile cases. But there was a lot of the mid-level and the low perpetrators who are very well known. They were neighbors. Some of them actually were relatives because there was intermarriage. And these were the cases that there was no proper system of dealing with, because the Rwandan courts themselves would not be able to deal with these cases. There are people who were in pre-trial for many years because they didn't know what to do with them, because a lot of concentration was in the ICTR. And I think the adoption of the community-based, the cultural-based process, the Gashasha, was actually a milestone. I think at some point, as we've said, it was controversial. But looking now that perpetrators and victims are living side by side, their neighbors, I think that's a classical example of the mediation process, maybe apart from the South African Truth and Reconciliation. But what is happening in Rwanda, it's actually a very classical example of how mediation can work. And now seeing that mediation cannot only be confined on civil matters, but mediation can actually be extended to matters, politics matters, criminal, or even like what happened in Rwanda. And looking even in Kenya, for example, after the post-election violence, I think there's still people who were not able to return to their homes, those who were evicted from their land. And I think there have been a lot of kind of, I don't know whether it's mediation, but kind of persuasion that they should go back where the internally displaced people who left their homes, those who were in satellite camps. We don't know up to this point how many of them have been able to go back and live with their neighbors.
Absolutely.
And embracing that also as a form of mediation. So I think when you talk about mediation, we think we need to grow it and to take it beyond the civil aspect of mediation and grow it towards, national cohesion, trying to use it to heal the nation. So I think that's where you can measure the success of mediation to that extent. So as far as Kenya is concerned, I think we are using it, we are learning, and it's a step towards probably better things ahead, because we have confined it only to matters civil, as you said, matters land, matters family court, but I think we need to grow it beyond that, so that we'll be able to settle even historical injustices.
Right. Kusinya, you have had experience really dealing with cases of mediation. Yes. What is the nature of most of the cases now that are causing the backlog in the cases?
Basically, land cases, as we were discussing, they're one of of the major backlog of the cases in the judiciary right now. Also family disputes in terms of children matters, separation, divorce matters, and commercial disputes also, because they're dragging too long. And some of these issues sometimes are beyond the parties themselves, because you realize sometimes you come to court and one of the parties is not present, or their advocates are not ready, or the court is not sitting. It's not sitting. So you realize it's something you as a party cannot control. And you're also under the mercy of your advocate to give you direction. But then when it comes to mediation, you realize it's easy because you have a lot of say. The mediator doesn't have much say in the mediation besides just guiding you to a solution. So then you can come up with your own solution and set the timelines and the dates for meeting and discussing the whole issue. Yes.
All right, now we're discussing alternative dispute resolution. Other than mediation, what other options do Kenyans have?
Other options are, when you look, for instance, at the Constitution of Kenya, Chapter 159, you realize it allows the court and tribunals to apply other alternative dispute resolution mechanisms such as arbitration, mediation, the one we are discussing, traditional dispute resolution mechanisms, and reconciliation, as it is. Yes. All right. So besides litigation, parties can decide to either go towards arbitration or mediation or the litigation system. And in this instance, for instance, right now you see like there are so many companies, foreign companies and investors trying to invest in Kenya. So what happens is normally when they do these contracts, they include mediation clauses and arbitration clauses, which makes it easy to resolve disputes when they come up. Yes.
All right. Let's go live to Ibrahim Karanja now, who is live for us from Nyeri County, from the Nyeri Law Courts, actually. Ibrahim, I understand a major milestone there has been achieved today. A case pitting two families over an issue of property successfully resolved through mediation. What more can you tell us?
Yes, indeed, Michelle, a major milestone. What is left, or what we expected to have today, was an adoption by the court of the process or of the agreement that was made between these two disputing factions. But this adoption is very likely to be made tomorrow. Of course, this is after a request by the legal representative for one of the defendants in this particular case. But from the look of things, the particular people involved in this particular case are ready. It is now going to be adopted. The solution has been found through mediation. I'll bring in the people involved in the case. They'll tell us their name, what the dispute was, and briefly they'll give us their opinion about the mediation process. I understand before this, they had a similar case that took 10 years before the court. And this one, through mediation, only through visits, and it's over. Tell me your name and then kindly tell us, brief us about, briefly about the case, if you may, and then tell us about the mediation process, how you find it.
My name is Hezekiah Wangombe Geshohi. I've actually been chairman of the company for the last 10 years, being elected by the members through the system of voting by hands and also voting by shares. This matter is a matter where the current officers of the company actually disrupted the meeting when it came to the issue of voting by shares. This is mainly because they were aware that by voting by shares, they could not be elected. So they insisted that the voting by show of hands was the final, and they are not going to allow any other. In that case, we had to actually come to this court, this honorable court, to actually file our matter, and our request was very simple. The fact that we want elections to be held by pool or shares, for that matter, and that is exactly what has been the issue. We have had this matter in our company for a long time, severally because most people don't understand the law. As for me, as a professional accountant, I understand that the two must be applied. Yes. In this case, in the last one which we followed, and we followed it in Nyeri, we followed it in Nairobi, and we followed it all the way until judgment was produced. It took more than 10 years. In this case, when the court came here, when we attended the court, we started the first time. We started the issues of cross-examination. I was partly cross-examined. Then the judge, in her own way, decided that this is a matter for mediation, and we were referred to mediation. We have been coming for mediation all the way from, for me, is all the way from Nairobi. We have been coming for mediation, but the mediation has taken 3 sittings.
Only 3 sittings?
Only 3 sittings. In my view, with the type of training that the mediators are being given, with the type of understanding that people are made to understand that courts are serious matters, mediation can actually be the solution for reducing most of the issues. It should not be limited to private companies. Yes. It should not be limited to anything. It can actually be modified. It can actually be used even for traffic matters.
Thank you.
In my view, in the traffic matters, the issue that is actually hurting the people is that the police know that the matter takes too long. And they themselves are not ready to come for, they are not ready to come for the hearing.
Yes.
So they are punishing the defendants because they know they will go there, they will not come. You'll go there several times, you will not come until you are tired and you are hurt and you lose a lot of time and money, which is very unnecessary and unreasonable. I would recommend that the court modify the mediation, actually make people understand what is mediation, and actually adopt mediation for most of the cases.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Allow me to bring the second person involved in this particular case. It is almost over. We cannot rule what will happen tomorrow, but the judge has categorically mentioned that for her it's only adoption. In fact, she is not interested in what the contents of that document is. She's not interested in what means it was used for you guys to get together. What is your opinion briefly on mediation, sir? Kindly start with your name.
Thank you. My name is Peter Gichoigetao, a director in Umoja Service Station in the company, and I am one of the defendants. And this case has gone on for nearly 3 years, from 2016. And as one of the defendants, we are taking to court three directors and the company. I decided to request the court. We decided to request the court to refer it for mediation, because it will take a shorter time. It would also reduce the hatred between the members, and also the amount of money of the company that is being spent on illegal issues, and also for coming to court severally. So now I am impressed by the mediation, because we only took 3 days or 3 sessions to come to a conclusion with a professional mediator. And I feel that mediation is a better alternative other than litigation process, because this will take a shorter time, and also will save a lot of money that belongs to the company. I would recommend that leaders in the company or even in the civil service to be educated on the importance or significance of mediation, because it will take a shorter time and maintain friendship and peace between the members of the company.
Yes, sir. You had mentioned about this case involving family, very briefly, involving relatives. What was the situation now? Mediation has come, no bad blood between the two parties. Briefly talk about that.
Okay. This company of ours was formed by members who are related in one way or the other. And when this case came, it has affected the relationship, because some people take it negatively. Even for mediation, some people did not even understand what mediation means. And even some of the directors did not understand what mediation is. And they decided to bring bad blood between those people who are asking for mediation, because they are thinking that by mediation, the mediation would create more problems to the company than going through the litigation process, which is not true. But for now, we have seen that mediation is the best alternative for most of the cases, because like now this one here, we are going to adopt the agreement tomorrow, and then from there, the case will come to an end very soon as a result of the mediation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, Michelle, you've heard it. A case, a point in case of mediation process that has gone successfully. The case had been before the courts for 10 years, but after it was referred for mediation, it only took 3 sittings and it's over. The two parties have agreed, and tomorrow the judge is very likely to adopt the agreement that was made between the two parties. She says she's not interested in the content. She says she's not interested on what means it was used for the two parties to agree. But bottom line is the two parties have agreed. We are going to adopt the document. Michelle, the success of mediation. Back to you, Michelle.
Many thanks. That is Ibrahim Karanja live for us from the Nyeri Law Court there. Quite a milestone as we speak. Just before we take a break and as we wind up this conversation, Ofula, what are some of the successes of mediation that you're seeing from this case? Okay,
you look here, it's time saving. Also, it saves money. It gives a closure to, now you see the two parties, all of them, there's closure. But also, it also raises confidence among the parties. What really has come out important is that then the process of conflict resolution is so fast that then when you go to the court processes, then the backlogs are reduced. Petty offenders, and you see, this is not a small case. This is a very big case. And that's what I was saying, is that it can be applied to even other bigger cases where we feel like once the parties agree, then we can be able to resolve. Also, they've said that also the money, they have saved a lot of money. Company money would actually be going to the legal process. Right.
As we wind up, Kusenya, your final comments on this case and why we should adopt mediation.
We should adopt mediation, first of all, as my colleague has just said, time saving. It saves a lot of time. As you can see, that case has dragged on for 10 years, and it only took 3 sessions to settle it. Costs in terms of money, you spend a lot when you go through litigation. You can imagine that period going back and forth through the court system, and realize it has saved a lot of that. But most importantly, restoring that relationship. You understand, you can have a solution, but you're not comfortable with the other party. But now you realize now they are good, and going forward, they are comfortable with the settlement. And that's very important when it comes to mediation process. And I also must add that in most cases when it comes to mediation, the issues that are in conflict, they are not the issues that are brought on the table. Most times they're the emotional issues that cannot be addressed in court. Parties come and bring issues about what they want. But then again now, through mediation, when you sit down with the parties, you realize, and you help them come to what they need instead of what they want. And you realize when they come faster to a solution and realize, why did it take us this long? And that's why we should embrace mediation. Right, time saving, restores the pre-conflict relationship as well. Quite an interesting way to go to reducing backlog in the country. Thank you for speaking to us. That is lawyer Caleb Kusianya, as well as analyst Ivan Sofula, both expert mediators, speaking to us about the adoption of court-annexed mediation as an alternative dispute resolution mechanism. We're asking you on Twitter whether you would opt for mediation other than moving to court. And most of you are saying, it depends on the weightiness of the matter. It depends on who the other opponent is. So we'll be keeping up on this conversation. Do keep talking to us. The hashtag is KTN News Center. We take a short break here, but we'll be back with more news making headlines.